The antiseptic sting still clung to the back of her throat, sharp as the pain pulsing beneath the white bandage across her abdomen. Linda blinked up at the flickering fluorescent light above her hospital bed. It hummed like an insect, droning into the corners of her exhausted mind. Outside the window, the sky was the color of tin, thick, dull, unmoving. A nurse had come and gone, adjusting her IV and murmuring something about a successful procedure. But Linda barely heard her. The pain medication left everything muffled, like she was watching her own life through a thick pane of frosted glass. She shifted, wincing as fire licked up her side. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone. It felt heavier than usual, like even technology could feel the weight of her aloneness. 3 missed calls, not from her son, not from Daniel. One was from Carol, her neighbor, one from a robocall, and one, cruelly ironic, from the hospital's billing department. Linda exhaled slowly, the breath catching in her chest. She opened her recent calls, scrolled down to Daniel's name, and pressed the green button. Her thumb hovered for a second before releasing, like she was surrendering something more than just airspace. The dial tone rang, once, twice, 3 times, each beat louder than her heartbeat. Then finally, the click of a connection. "Yeah," came Daniel's voice, slightly breathless, as if he'd picked up mid-stride. "It's me," she said, voice papery and dry. "I just got out of surgery." A pause. Then, "Oh, right, that was today?" Linda swallowed hard. "The doctor said I'll need help around the house for a few days, just until I'm back on my feet." She didn't hear concern, just shifting air. Then, a voice in the background, high-pitched, lilting, unmistakably Heather. Laughter, clinking glasses, music, faint but unmistakable. Daniel lowered his voice. "Mom, I told you I'm out of town. Business conference. I can't just leave. You know how critical this deal is." "A conference?" she repeated softly. "Yes," he said, annoyed now. "We went over this." There was a beat where Linda didn't say anything. Her chest rose and fell, the sting in her side suddenly sharper. "I just thought, maybe you'd want to be here." "Look," Daniel said quickly, voice speeding up like he was trying to outpace her disappointment. "I'll send some money for a nurse. That should cover it, right? Just hire someone. I really can't do this right now." Then came the 1-2 punch of modern abandonment. A click, a dead tone, and the chilling silence of disconnection. Linda stared at the phone in her hand. It dimmed on its own, like it couldn't bear to watch her anymore. For a while, she didn't move. Her other hand rested on the bed rail, white-knuckled. Her breathing had grown quiet, so quiet that even the wall clock ticking behind her felt intrusive. Tick, tick, tick. She turned her head slowly and opened Facebook. She wasn't even sure why. Habit, maybe. Or the desperate urge to feel tethered to something, anything. The screen glared bright red. 9 new photos from Heather Walker. Linda's finger hesitated. Then she tapped. The first photo was glittering. A banquet hall aglow with chandeliers like frozen waterfalls. Long tables stretched endlessly, laden with seafood towers and golden-crusted steaks. The caption read, "Happy birthday to the best parents in the world." And there he was, Daniel, 2 images in a suit, grinning, champagne in hand, toasting Heather's mother and father. Linda's thumb froze mid-scroll. Her body stiffened, as if the truth had yanked the air right out of the room. There was no conference, no emergency meeting. There was a party, a goddamn birthday party. The betrayal moved slow, like syrup through her veins, heavy, sickening. She reread the caption, "Wishing you health, joy, and sunshine every day." Linda closed her eyes, but the images seared into her memory like an iron brand. She had almost died on that operating table, and her only son had raised a glass to someone else's parents instead. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she set the phone down, each movement deliberate. She adjusted the pillow behind her back, reached slowly for the bedside call button. Her thumb hovered, then retreated. Number. She didn't need a nurse right now. She needed clarity. Because 3 missed calls while she fought for her life was more than just a statistic. It was the beginning of the end. And her son? He had no idea what was coming next. Long before hospital beds and betrayal, there was just Linda, young, sharp, and perpetually exhausted. A widow by 39, she raised Daniel on little more than guts and grit. She worked 2 jobs through most of his childhood, cashier by day, custodian by night, so he could have the sneakers the other boys wore, the art supplies he loved, the field trips his classmates took for granted. There was no backup plan. Just Linda's name, her hands, and her unwavering belief that if she poured enough love and sacrifice into Daniel, he'd never grow up to treat her like a burden. At first it worked. He was a sweet boy, soft-spoken, artistic, the kind who clung to her hand long after the other boys had let go of theirs. She remembered the day he got into college. He called her from the admissions office, his voice breathless with joy. "Mom, I got in. Full ride, but there's housing and supplies and—" "Don't worry," she had said immediately, heart bursting even as her mind calculated which bills could be late that month. "We'll make it work." And they did. She cashed out her tiny life insurance policy to cover the first-year expenses. She skipped dental visits. She walked home instead of taking the bus. Daniel graduated with honors. He didn't see her crying in the back of the auditorium, half hidden behind the tall family with the helium balloons. She hadn't told him she borrowed a neighbor's dress for the occasion, or that her shoes pinched so badly she couldn't feel her toes for days after. Still, she had smiled, because he was her world, and she had always believed that love, quiet, enduring love, would be enough. But things started to change when Heather came into the picture. At first, Linda tried to like her. She remembered their first dinner, the girl's practiced smile, her constant phone checking, the subtle but unmistakable glances at Linda's secondhand furniture. Heather had worn perfume so strong it made Linda's eyes water, and not once did she ask Linda a question that wasn't about Daniel's career. "She's just nervous," Daniel had insisted. "She wants to make a good impression." But impressions don't fade. They calcify. Soon, Heather's presence meant Linda was always the third wheel. Her phone calls were returned with quick texts. Her invitations to lunch became inconvenient. One Thanksgiving, Daniel said they were doing something small, just the 2 of them, and promised to call. He didn't. Linda spent the day eating a microwaved turkey dinner and watching reruns of cooking shows she used to love. Still, she persisted. She kept giving. She wrote checks for the wedding, paid the florist deposit herself when Heather's parents couldn't cover it. She wasn't even angry, just relieved to be included. A month after the honeymoon, Daniel called. "Mom, we found a house. It's perfect, but the down payment—" Of course she gave it, nearly everything she'd saved. "Just until you're settled," she said. "You can put the house in your name. I trust you." And she did. She trusted that her name would still mean something, that all the years she'd spent putting his life ahead of hers would eventually circle back like a boomerang, landing in her hands as kindness when she needed it most. Instead, it landed like a stone. She remembered the first time Heather called her Linda instead of Mom. It was small, a slip, but Linda felt it like a paper cut across her soul. The second time it happened, Daniel didn't even flinch, and when Linda quietly brought it up, he waved it off. "She doesn't mean anything by it. You're being sensitive." Being sensitive. That phrase settled in her bones like winter. It followed her through birthdays they forgot, holidays where she waited for a call that never came. Through endless errands she ran just to help out, the babysitting, the groceries, the utilities quietly paid behind the scenes when she saw the red stamps on their bills. She had trained herself to understand, to forgive, to rationalize, because that's what good mothers did. They folded their hurt like old laundry and stuffed it in drawers no one ever opened. They smiled through the ache. They waited in silence. They believed, until the very last, that love would return. But lying alone in that hospital bed, the antiseptic biting at her nostrils, Linda finally saw it for what it was. Not love, convenience. She was useful until she wasn't, until her body broke down and she needed instead of gave. And now that she had nothing left to offer, the silence around her wasn't an oversight. It was a message, clear, deliberate. She closed her eyes, the weight of the years pressing down like lead. Every skipped vacation, every unused gift card, every moment she chose them over herself. All of it had brought her here. 3 missed calls, none from Daniel, a son who couldn't be bothered to answer when his mother was clawing her way back from death. Linda opened her eyes again, the ceiling above her gray and endless. She no longer felt tired. She felt awake. Linda sat propped against her pillows, eyes fixed on the muted TV across the room, but her mind had long drifted. The news anchor's mouth moved soundlessly, delivering another tragedy to a world too saturated with them to care. The beeping of her IV slowed to a lull. Her breathing matched its rhythm, shallow even. It was the stillness after the storm. Pain dulled, but not gone. Thoughts quiet, but not kind. She picked up her phone again, not to call. She had learned that lesson, but to scroll. It was instinct, a habitual reach for distraction. Something to fill the vacuum Daniel had left. Her thumb moved lazily until a red dot on the screen drew her eye, a Facebook notification. Heather Walker posted 9 new photos. Linda hesitated, her finger hovering like it already knew better. But curiosity, like grief, was insatiable. She tapped. The first photo hit like a slap. Daniel, her Daniel, stood center frame, sharp in a navy suit, hand raised in a toast. On either side of him, Heather's parents beamed, their arms wrapped around him like he was their own. The caption above was syrup sweet. Happy birthday to the most amazing parents in the world. Thank you for everything you've ever done for me and Daniel. We love you so much. Linda's heart stalled, then sputtered. She scrolled. The second image, Heather, pressed cheek to cheek with her mother, both mid-laugh, glasses of wine poised like props in a magazine spread. Third image, a chandelier so grand it looked like it belonged in Versailles. Long tables draped in velvet, towers of seafood, rose petals scattered like confetti. Fourth, a group shot, Daniel again, laughing, champagne in hand. Not a trace of worry on his face, no phone in sight. She scrolled faster. Image 5, cake cutting, a triple-tiered monster, frosted in edible gold. Heather's father slicing it with a grin while Daniel clapped in the background. Image 6, a candid, Daniel with his arm around Heather's dad, faces lit with laughter. 7, Heather's mother blowing out candles, her daughter beside her, eyes gleaming. 8, a selfie of the couple, faces lit by soft candlelight, his arms snug around her waist. 9. Linda stopped cold. It was a group photo. Heather's parents, their friends, and barely visible in the bottom right corner, Daniel, sitting, smiling, mid-toast. And in the corner of that image, on the table just beside him, was his phone. Unlocked. Notifications glowing. 3 missed calls. Her calls. Linda's stomach turned. The beeping of her IV suddenly grew louder, more insistent. He hadn't been away on business. He'd been here, drenched in laughter, toasting strangers, while she bled on an operating table, while she woke up alone. A sound escaped her throat, not a sob, not a scream, something lower, more dangerous, a kind of grief that had no name. She scrolled back up, reread the caption. "We love you so much." Linda locked her phone and set it down slowly as if it might bite her. The air felt thinner. The pain in her side flared again, but it wasn't the incision. It was somewhere deeper. The door creaked. A nurse entered, cheerful, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Walker, time for your vitals." "I'm fine," Linda said, voice hoarse. "Just give me a minute." The nurse paused, then gave a tight nod. "Call me if you need anything." Linda didn't respond. She stared out the window as the nurse exited, her reflection faint in the glass. She barely recognized the woman looking back. Hollowed, hardened. A memory surfaced. Daniel, at age 12, feverish and whimpering, curled on the couch as she stayed up all night pressing cold cloths to his forehead. He had cried for her every time he was in pain. And now? Now he toasted someone else's health while she lay sliced open, breathing through morphine and heartbreak. Linda reached for her notebook in the drawer. She opened to a clean page and wrote just one sentence. "This is the last time I beg to be loved." The next morning, Linda dialed Daniel again. Not out of hope, but necessity. Her discharge was approaching, and she couldn't climb stairs alone. Her gut churned as the phone rang, each tone a countdown to disappointment. He picked up on the fourth ring. "Mom? What's up?" His voice was brisk, distracted. "I'm being discharged tomorrow," she said plainly. "The nurse says I'll need help for at least a week." Silence. Then, "I thought we talked about this. I'm still out of town." "Are you?" Linda asked quietly. Another silence, shorter this time. Then he coughed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I saw Heather's post." That stopped him. "I saw the party, Daniel," she continued, voice steady. "I saw you, the suit, the champagne, the phone on the table, my name lit up in missed calls while you toasted her parents." Daniel exhaled harshly. "Look, I was only there for a little while. I didn't want to go." "But you did," she said. "Mom!" "No, you lied," Linda snapped, her tone sharper now. "You let me wake up alone after major surgery and told me you were working while you celebrated people who didn't raise you. Then you cut the call short to get back to the party." "You're making this a thing," he muttered. "It is a thing, Daniel." The silence turned icy. Then a new voice joined the line. "Linda?" Heather's voice, sugar dipped in steel. Linda didn't speak. "I just think it's unfair to guilt him like this," Heather continued. "He's under a lot of pressure, his job's demanding, and honestly, this whole situation is very emotional. Maybe you're not seeing things clearly." Linda nearly laughed. "Not seeing things clearly?" "You're in pain," Heather said, soothing. "Pain makes people irrational." "I'm recovering," Linda corrected, not confused. There was a pause, then Heather dropped the sweet tone entirely. "You promised to help us," she said. "That house? That was your idea. Don't make this ugly now." Linda felt something inside her splinter. "Ugly?" Heather continued, confident now. "We've done everything we could for you." "You've done nothing," Linda whispered. "I begged for help and got a voicemail tone, and now you're worried about how this looks?" "I think," Heather said slowly, "it's time you considered what's best for everyone. Daniel has a career. Leo starts school in the fall. We can't be tied down by guilt trips and emotional manipulation." Guilt trips. Emotional manipulation. Linda stood up, too fast. Pain seared her side, but she stayed upright. "I'm not tying anyone down," she said. "I'm just finally seeing who you both are." Another pause. Then Daniel spoke, tone defensive. "Why are you doing this? Why now? We're trying our best, okay? Life is hard for us, too." "No," Linda said, her voice quieter now, but heavier. "What's hard is raising a child alone on 2 minimum-wage jobs. What's hard is cleaning other people's bathrooms so your son can go to art camp. What's hard is spending your entire life giving, only to be erased." "I didn't erase you," he said weakly. "You didn't even visit," she said. "You didn't show up." Another silence. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said, calm and final. "Don't call unless it's to apologize." "Mom!" Click. The line went dead. Linda stared at the screen for a moment. Her hand trembled. She wasn't sure if it was anger or grief or both. Then she set the phone down. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. It was raw, but it was real. And for the first time in years, it belonged to her. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. The pain meds dulled the sharpness in her side, but nothing touched the ache in her chest, the bruised place where love had turned to something else, something cold. She lay staring at the ceiling, her eyes tracing the cracks in the plaster like fault lines in her own life. She thought of Daniel as a boy, his peanut butter-streaked cheeks, the way he used to cling to her waist after preschool. He once cried when she left him with a babysitter, sobbing until she came home early, cradling him in the rocking chair as he whispered, "Don't go, Mommy. I only want you." When did that little boy become a man who could forget her? The images tumbled in, uneven, unkind. The month she picked up a third job to afford his SAT tutoring, working graveyard janitorial shifts at a warehouse that never turned off its fluorescent lights. Her bones had ached. Her hands, raw from bleach, bled into her gloves. The winter she pawned her wedding ring, her only heirloom, to help him cover a deposit on an apartment after graduation. Heather had wanted granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a place that looked like their future. She never told Daniel what she gave up to help. It was better that way, she told herself. Parents don't keep score. But somewhere deep inside, a ledger had formed, not of money, but moments. The birthdays spent alone, the calls that went unanswered, the empty seats at her table. When Leo, their son, was born, Linda had driven 3 hours in the rain to hold him on the day he arrived. She brought a crocheted blanket she'd made, cream and blue, and Daniel had taken it politely, barely glancing at it before handing it to a nurse. Later, she saw a photo on Heather's Instagram, the baby swaddled in a designer blanket, tagged with a luxury brand name. The one she made was nowhere in sight. Still, she came. She babysat, she baked, she bought gifts. One December, when Heather called saying, "We're a little tight this month," Linda wired money without hesitation. That same week, she canceled her own doctor's appointment, an annual checkup she hadn't had in 3 years. "You can reschedule," she'd told herself. "Leo needs that tutoring program more than I need a blood test." She wore the same coat for 8 winters, its elbows thinned, the lining torn. She could have bought a new one, but instead she used the money to cover their overdue utility bill. Heather had texted her late at night, "Don't want the baby to be cold." Linda had gone without heat herself to make sure they didn't. And now, they were warm, their bills paid, their lives curated to perfection in digital snapshots. And she was here, in a borrowed hospital gown, her pain muted by morphine and betrayal. She turned to the small table beside her bed and pulled open the drawer. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, her ledger, not one she'd ever shown anyone. A habit from her early years of budgeting, back when every dollar had to be counted 3 times before it could be spent. Page after page, dates, amounts, reasons. $450, baby formula plus diapers $2,000. Heather's dental surgery uninsured $15,000. Down payment on house $7,800. 6 months of mortgage, while Daniel was between jobs, $900. Leo's private preschool entrance fee. She had documented it all, not for revenge, for memory, because even when she wasn't seen, she had seen herself. She flipped to a blank page and wrote slowly, "I used to believe sacrifice was love. But real love doesn't forget you when you're no longer useful." A knock startled her. It was Naomi, the night nurse, young, steady-handed, kind-eyed. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, glancing at the still glowing screen of Linda's phone. Linda shook her head. "Too many ghosts." Naomi smiled gently. "Pain has a long memory." She helped Linda shift in bed, adjusted her pillows, refilled the water jug. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "Your son still hasn't come?" "No," Linda said softly. Naomi hesitated. "You deserve better than that." The door clicked shut behind her. Linda looked back at her notebook. Under her last sentence, she wrote a new line, one that felt less like mourning and more like a warning. "I may be quiet, but I keep receipts." The day Linda was discharged, the sky outside the hospital sagged under a blanket of gray. Naomi helped her dress, slowly, carefully. Every movement sent a tremor of pain through her side, but she gritted her teeth and bore it. Daniel and Heather were supposed to pick her up. Supposed to. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, Carol arrived. Linda's neighbor and lifelong friend, cardigan, buttoned crooked, and eyes full of fire. "They didn't show," she asked, jaw tight. Linda shook her head. "Didn't call either. Carol didn't curse, but her silence spoke volumes. Together, they rode home in Carol's car, a battered sedan that smelled faintly of peppermint and dog treats. Linda sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap. When they reached her apartment, the air inside hit her like a slap. Stale, untouched, cold. Dirty dishes in the sink, mail piled on the counter, as if her absence meant nothing. Carol helped her into bed. Before she left, she paused in the doorway. "Anything you need," she said. "You call me, not them." Linda nodded, but said nothing. That night, as the wind howled outside, her phone rang. "Daniel," she answered. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice extra cheerful, too cheerful. "Heard you got home okay." "You weren't there," she said flatly. "We got caught up," he said quickly. "Work emergency. Heather's been swamped too. Leo's sick. Just chaos." "I waited," she said. A pause. "Did Carol drive you?" he asked, as if that erased the abandonment. "Yes," he exhaled. "See? It worked out. That's all that matters, right?" Linda didn't respond. Then Heather's voice piped up in the background. "Ask her if she paid the mortgage." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Right, yeah, sorry, but we were wondering if you could send the usual this month." "We're tight again. And the due date's like tomorrow." Linda sat up slowly. Her ribs ached, but something deeper hurt more. "You want money," she said. "The day I got out of the hospital, after you left me to rot." "Come on," Daniel said, voice quickening. "That's not fair. We've always been a team." "No," Linda said coldly. "I was your bank, your nanny, your fallback. Mom, I'm done." Silence. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said slowly, "I'm not sending another dime. Not for the house, not for your bills, not ever." His voice cracked. "You can't just stop." "I can," she interrupted. "And I will." Heather's voice burst through, shrill and furious. "Linda, we count on you." Linda stared at the ceiling, her voice like ice. "Then you'd better learn to count on yourselves." She ended the call and didn't look back. 3 days passed before the next message arrived. Not a call, a text. "Daniel. Hey, Mom, just checking in. You okay?" Linda read it twice, unmoved. The words looked harmless, but she could see through them, thinly veiled panic dressed as concern. She didn't reply. Hours later, another text. "Daniel. Heather's worried about you. Should we come by?" Still, she said nothing. By the end of the week, Carol brought over a casserole and the latest neighborhood gossip. "They're scrambling," she said, setting the dish on the counter. "Saw Heather arguing with her mom in the driveway. Something about refinancing. Sounded tense." Linda didn't smile, but she didn't flinch either. That night, a voicemail from Heather landed in her inbox. Syrupy, anxious. "Hi, Linda. Just wondering if you've had a chance to look at this month's payment. We're getting notices, and I know things have been a little strained, but we're family, right? Let's not let money ruin that. Call us?" Linda deleted the message without listening to the end. The next week, Daniel showed up unannounced. She heard the knock before she saw him. Soft, rhythmic, almost apologetic. Linda opened the door slowly. He looked tired, unshaven, less polished than usual. "Hey," he said, hands jammed in his pockets. "Daniel." "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He stood awkwardly in her living room, eyes darting from the worn rug to the chipped coffee table. Things he used to mock Heather for. "We'll get you new stuff when we're stable," he had said once. Linda sat, but didn't offer him a seat. He cleared his throat. "I know we've made mistakes." She said nothing. "I never meant to hurt you." She let the silence sit. I thought you'd always be there. You always were. So when you weren't..." He trailed off, eyes wet now. "It scared me." Linda watched him, this boy who had become a man she no longer recognized. "Did it scare you when I was calling from the hospital?" she asked. "When I needed help getting to the bathroom? When the doctor said I might not make it through the night?" He blinked hard. "I didn't know it was that serious." "You didn't ask." "I'm sorry. It's not enough." Daniel swallowed. We're drowning. Heather's credit is maxed out. We might lose the house. Leo. Linda stood slowly. Her voice was low, final. You should have thought about that before you left me alone. Daniel didn't speak. She walked to the door and opened it. He stared for a moment, as if waiting for her to change her mind, but she didn't. And when the door clicked shut behind him, she locked it. Then she turned toward the kitchen, where the smell of Carol's casserole still lingered. The tide was shifting, and this time it wasn't sweeping her under. The days grew lighter. Linda found herself sitting by the window more often, watching the world carry on without her for once. Carol's weekly visits became a lifeline, but there was something else, a quiet rhythm returning to Linda's breath. She signed up for an arts and crafts class at the senior center, a place she'd always passed but never entered. On her first day, her hands trembled as she held a paintbrush. Colors spilled like memories on the canvas, bright reds, deep blues, hopeful greens. The instructor, a gentle woman named Marlene, smiled warmly. You have a good eye. Linda smiled back, a small curve that felt like the first crack in a long frozen door. She began volunteering on weekends, teaching kids how to make paper flowers and friendship bracelets. They called her Ms. Linda, their bright faces reminding her that love could still grow. Her phone still buzzed occasionally with messages from Daniel or Heather, but she left them unread. Instead, she answered calls from Carol, from Marlene, even from old friends who had seen her strength before she had. One afternoon, as she walked home, she noticed a wildflower pushing through cracked pavement. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't tamed, it was stubborn, like her. That evening she brewed tea, strong, sweet, with a pinch of cinnamon, and watched the sun cast golden light across her small apartment. For the first time in years, she felt a softness inside her chest. Not the ache of betrayal, but the warm bloom of hope. Because this was no longer about the family she lost. It was about the life she was reclaiming. The knock on the door startled Linda. She wasn't expecting anyone. Yet, there stood Leo, her grandson, looking older than the photos Heather had shared on social media, but somehow more real. His eyes held a mix of confusion and something softer, concern, maybe even regret. Grandma, he said quietly. Linda opened the door wider, heart pounding in her chest. Leo, she whispered. He stepped inside, hesitant, as if stepping into a stranger's home. I've heard things, he said, voice low, about the hospital, about everything. Linda nodded, unsure where this was headed. I didn't know, Leo continued, how they treated you, how they made you feel. She looked away, pain flickering in her eyes. I'm sorry, he said, earnest. I didn't realize what was happening while I was a kid. Linda studied his face. The boy she once held in her arms, now grown, trying to bridge the distance years had carved between them. Why now? She asked. Leo's gaze dropped. Because I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. It was the first olive branch Linda had seen in years. Torn between caution and hope, she took a breath. Show me, she said. Leo smiled, the kind of smile that promised change. They spent the afternoon talking, sharing memories and truths. It wasn't a perfect reunion. There were tears, there were questions, but above all, there was a tentative connection, a chance for healing. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and humming with the low murmur of anticipation. Linda sat with her attorney, Ethan, clutching a thick folder filled with every piece of evidence she had painstakingly gathered. The bank statements, the screenshots, the witness statements from neighbors who had watched the betrayal unfold in silence. Daniel and Heather arrived late, faces drawn and pale, stripped of their usual arrogance. Their rehearsed smiles had wilted, replaced by an uneasy tension that spoke volumes. Ethan rose and presented the case with quiet authority. Each page, each testimony, laid bare the truth no longer hidden behind lies and social media facades. Heather's attempts to deflect and deny crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Daniel's pleas softened into silence. The judge's voice cut through the tension like a blade. This court finds that the plaintiff, Ms. Walker, is entitled to full reimbursement of all financial contributions made toward the property in question, including the down payment and ongoing mortgage payments. Furthermore, the defendants are found responsible for neglect of familial duties during Ms. Walker's hospitalization, a matter which will be noted in this court's record. Linda's heart pounded as relief and vindication washed over her. She didn't cry, not because she was unfeeling, but because this was her moment of quiet triumph. Outside, neighbors gathered to offer congratulations and support. Cynthia handed her a card with a watercolor of two hands holding wildflowers. "We're so proud of you," she said softly. Linda smiled, the weight of years lifting, the burden of silence finally broken. Months later, she sold the house, the one she had helped pay for, and moved to a small town on the city's edge. She rented a cozy room at the local senior center, where she taught arts and crafts and planted wildflowers by her window. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, Linda's phone lit up with a notification. 3 missed calls. She smiled gently, silenced the phone, and walked to the window. Outside, the wildflowers swayed in the breeze. For the first time in years, Linda felt free.